Welcome to Turning Back the Pages, the podcast where children's book authors discuss their favorite childhood books. I'm your host, Allie. Today, author Hollie Michaels is joining me to discuss her favorite childhood book, Ramona the Pest, by Beverly Cleary. Hollie Michaels is an author, illustrator, playwright, theater teacher, and director. She is the author of a new chapter book series, Golda and Ezra, published by Capstone. Recently, she was the finalist for the Cornerstone Writer-in-Residence Program at Wilton Library, a RUCCL mentee 2 years in a row, and her illustration portfolio won the Tassy Walden Award for New Voices in 2023. Hollie has a background in theater and film. She holds 2 masters, one in creative writing scripts from City University of London and the other in educational theater from City College of New York. Before the pandemic, Hollie was a K-12 theater educator. Currently, Hollie is focused on writing for children full-time. She is also a published youth playwright. Her middle grade play, Children of Hooverville, is published by YOUTHplays and is performed around the country by middle school students. She is an active member of 12 by 12, SCBWI, and Kids Comics Unite. She lives in New England with her 2 kids, 1 corgi and 1 former alley cat. Welcome, Hollie.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's get started. You chose Ramona the Pest by Beverly Cleary. Let's start with our recap challenge, where we will both get 1 minute on the clock to recap the book. Would you like to get us started?
Sure.
Okay, I have 1 minute on the clock starting now.
Okay. Ramona is a spunky young girl who's starting kindergarten, and the book is about her first few months in kindergarten, and the challenges that she faces with her peers, and her teacher, who she really loves her teacher, but she gets in trouble when a girl calls her a pest, and she boinks the girl's curl, and the teacher sends her home for misbehaving and says, "You can come back when you can behave." And she's really honest and says, "I don't know that I can," and is really upset. And she thinks the teacher hates her and refuses to go back to school no matter what anyone says. But then several days later, a friend from class brings her a note from her teacher saying, "When are you returning?" And suddenly the world is right again. Her teacher loves her and she goes back to kindergarten.
That was really good. Just under a minute. Right, I am setting a timer for myself. Ramona the Pest is the second book in the Ramona series, following the Beezus and Ramona book, which focused more on Beezus' trouble with her little sister. That little sister is now a year older and headed to kindergarten. But it's hard to be in kindergarten when you need to sit still doing seat work and you just want to know what everyone else is doing. Ramona often finds herself in trouble, from pulling a curly girl's ringlets to see them bounce, to hiding from a substitute teacher and missing class. Ramona doesn't necessarily learn any behavioral lessons, but she does learn that she is wanted in her kindergarten classroom. She had been suspended and never wanted to return until her teacher writes her a letter returning a tooth that she had lost in class and inviting her to return back to class. All right, just under a minute. Good job to both of us. I believe that this was the first time I had read this one. I've read a few other in the series. We read Beezus and Ramona, the first one, last year, but I read this one without my oldest, and I feel like we're going to have to go back and read it. Okay, let's talk about Beverly Cleary. Beverly Cleary was born in McMinnville, Oregon, and lived on a farm in Yamville until she was school-aged. Her town was so small that it did not have a library, so her mother made an arrangement with the Oregon State Library to send books to Yamhill. She acted as a librarian in an upstairs room above the bank. However, her family moved to Portland when she was old enough to attend school, and Cleary was put into the school's lowest reading circle. Cleary later said, "The first grade was sorted into 3 reading groups: bluebirds, redbirds, and blackbirds. I was a blackbird, and to be a blackbird was to be disgraced. I wanted to read, but somehow could not." By the 3rd grade, her reading skills had much improved, but her time as a struggling reader made her sensitive to the trials of children who struggle to read. One rainy afternoon in her third grade year, Cleary opened a book called The Dutch Twins and found herself reading for fun. From that moment on, she says, I was a reader. She spent much of her time in childhood surrounded by books, but she also found many of the books for children boring. These were the books from England with children with nannies. She just couldn't relate. She later said, as a child, I disliked books in which children learned to be better children, but these books played a big role in the types of books she would later write. She wanted characters that were funny, the types of kids that she would see in her own neighborhood, the types of kids other kids like her could relate to. She went to the College of University in Berkeley, where she studied English, and then she returned to the University of Washington in Seattle to study librarianship. Her first job after graduation was at a public library in Yamaka. There she met a little boy who wanted to know where to find all the books about kids like us, and she had no answer. And she recalled her own childhood search for books about the sort of kids who lived in her neighborhood, just ordinary kids with ordinary kid concerns like schoolwork and skin knees and lost dogs. And she thought to herself, I'll write these books myself. And so her first character was born, though it would take another 10 years before she wrote a book. Do you know who her first character was?
Henry Huggins.
Yes, Henry Huggins. And do you know how much she sold her first manuscript of Henry Huggins for in 1949?
Oh goodness. I don't know, but it'll probably be sad because it'll probably be similar to what I get now.
She sold it for $500 in 1949, and it was published a year later in 1950.
Wow.
I thought this was interesting. Cleary coordinated her writing day with the baking of bread, stretching her legs when the dough needed to be punched down, again when it needed to be put into the oven, and then finishing her day when it was ready to eat.
That's why she lived to 104.
Exactly. Ramona, who is the main character of the book we will discuss today, was introduced in Henry Huggins. Do you know why Cleary originally introduced Ramona?
No.
It really was just because she wanted Beezus to have a sibling in the Henry Huggins books. Cleary reported that she had introduced Ramona simply to give one of the characters a sibling, Ramona and Beezus being sisters that were friends with Henry Huggins. But she soon learned that the stubborn, meddlesome, sensitive little girl was going to insinuate herself into every story she could. By 1955, she was a title character. Ramona seemed to give expression to a side of Cleary's personality that she had never found an outlet for before. Cleary was always a quiet, respectful child, she explains, but I had Ramona-like thoughts. Ramona's complexity was something unusual in children's literature. Seen through the eyes of any other character, she could be a real nuisance, but when Cleary wrote from Ramona's point of view, all of the little girl's actions made perfect sense. One of Cleary's talents was really listening to children and how children talked. She used pieces of real conversations with children in her books and used her childhood as inspiration as well. She died in 2021 at the age of 104. Her work is still a favorite among children, and her birthday, April 12th, was declared by librarians to be a day of reading. So, Holly, tell me why you chose Ramona the Pest.
I think I always identified really strongly with Ramona. I am convinced that she is definitely a child who has ADHD, like I do. I always felt misunderstood. I was always in trouble, always kind of like a pest. But to me, it all seemed like logical misunderstandings. And, when you Ramona, it's like she doesn't set out to be annoying or a pest or anything. She's just doing her, and just how she sees the world and her misconceptions and her small injustice. I think I just really related to that as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, just having a child with ADHD, I find it really relatable, and the way Cleary writes her, and she's just so funny. The way things just like pop into her brain, like it makes sense when you read it from her perspective. And one of the things I really liked reading about Cleary, and I saw it in this book, is that she was really big about not writing books that were telling kids how to be better children. And so Ramona doesn't really learn a behavioral lesson in this. What the big takeaway really was that she wasn't shamed and she was invited and she was shown that she was wanted.
Yes, that's all she wanted.
Okay, so tell me about your first memory reading the book.
Well, I was also like Beverly Cleary. I was a delayed reader until
Mhm,
third grade, because of my because of my learning disabilities until they realized what was going on. But then once I could read, I wanted to read everything. And I think just because the character was so felt like me, so relatable that I just gravitated towards them right away. Once they're a little chunky for the character's age, like a kindergartner, the
mhm,
chapters are a little long, like reading it now as an adult.
mhm,
And I was surprised at how like long the chapters seem compared to, current books for that age range.
mhm.
But I guess it didn't bother me as a kid because I really gobbled them up.
Yeah. So how has reading it through the years changed? Do you still enjoy it?
It's interesting. That's I remembered the vibes of it,
Mhm,
but I didn't remember how long the chapters were. And I had tried to give it to my daughter. She's 11 now, but when she was a little younger,
mhm,
and she never got into it.
mhm,
I might try with my son who's 7.
mhm.
They are very much into graphic novels and more illustrated books. So it's harder to get them into it. I guess maybe I have to read it out loud to them.
Yes. Yeah, all the ones that don't have pictures or just having to read out loud. My oldest will sit there and color when I read to her, but if it doesn't have pictures, she's just kind of like, eh.
Yes, yeah. My kids as well.
As a child, what stood out to you about this book?
I think just the logic, like Ramona's logic made so much sense to me. And I was like,
Mhm.
yes, she gets it. Yes. It's such kid logic, and I love
Mhm.
that. I love that it wasn't so lessony, like you need to learn to do this. It's just here's the consequence. Here's what she did. She boinked the girl's hair, who I have those curls, so I could relate to them wanting to boink them. I boink mine all day. I know how she feels. But the consequence was she's pulling hair, she had to go home.
Uh-huh.
So you know, I like that it's not a lesson to learn. It's just this is what happens when you do this.
Right. Were there any other books when you were growing up that you related to like this? Like the thought process that Ramona has?
Oh, I don't remember. Yeah, no, I really think was just really into the Ramona books.
Mhm.
And then when I got a little bit stronger of a reader, I went right into VC Andrews. So I skipped. I went right from Ramona into Flowers in the Attic. So
That is quite a skip. I just wonder, like, as a child, did you pick up on Cleary's lack of a lesson in the book? You know, how she didn't write for kids to become better kids, but did you notice something like that? Like, was it a stark contrast, or did you just enjoy the book because you related?
I think I just related.
Yeah. What is your favorite part of Ramona the Pest?
I think that my I really love the Halloween chapter where she wants to just be the scary witch, the scariest witch ever, and she gets the mask that's truly terrifying. But when she gets to school, there are other kids who have masks just as scary, but the scariest thing for her was nobody knew who she was. Nobody could recognize her, and not being recognized was more scary. So she was so excited about this mask, but she takes it off so that people know who she is. And I love the logic of that.
Mm, that's so funny. Who is your favorite character?
Ramona.
If you had to choose one besides Ramona.
I think that's so hard. I guess maybe the the girl with the curls, Susan, I think her name is. She's kind of like a little know-it-all, little bossy pants. But she sticks up for herself, and I kind of like
Yeah.
that.
If you were going to cast a movie of Ramona the Pest, who would you cast Ramona as? I know that there are movies for Beezus and Ramona, but who would you cast Ramona as?
Oh goodness. I think a lot of the child stars I know are too old to play that role.
Yeah.
I think you have to like do a nationwide search and get some undiscovered child, and that would be their breakout. I can't think of any child actors that age that
If you could, I mean, you could go back to the 80s or 90s. Do you have anyone from previous decades?
the 80s are named. I'm trying to remember the shows.
I think the Ramona and Beezus that is already a movie. Joey King plays Ramona, and then Beezus is played by Selena Gomez.
Oh, that's such a yeah, Selena Gomez. That's good casting.
Mhm. Yeah, I like her as Beezus. Would you change anything about this book?
I think I'd make the chapters a little snappier.
Yeah.
Um, Even I, as an adult, for the beginning of it, was like, all right, what's going to happen next? Can we
Mhm.
go a little bit further?
So you said you were a late reader. Obviously, you later read Flyers in the Attic, but were you an avid reader like after the third grade?
Yeah, once I could read, I was always reading.
Would your childhood self be surprised that you've written books?
Yes and no. I was always writing. I was always a writer. But I thought because of my dyslexia and my learning disabilities, I couldn't be a writer because
Mhm.
I would awful speller. So I didn't know it was possible. And
Mhm.
then when I was in like middle school or high school, I said that to my English teacher, and she was like, "That's what editors are for." And I was like, "Oh." I mean, I got better at spelling and all that. So it's something I always wanted, but didn't know I could do.
That kind of reminds me when I was in the fourth grade, I had gotten really good grades except for spelling. And my parents were like really upset about it and just thought I would never be a good speller and went and talked to my fourth grade teacher and she was just like, she'll be fine. There's spell check now. She'll be fine. And I'm actually a decent speller now, so we grew out of it. All right, let's transition into talking about your book. So tell me about your series and then just anything that you have been working on.
Sure. I have a chapter book series called Golda and Ezra. There's 4 books out, and they're about these step siblings who live in Miami. It's where I grew up. And they just love to help their community. But it's like their everyday little kid problems, and how they can solve it their way. And there's a lot of Jewish culture, so there's Jewish themes in it, and there's back matter in the back to explain what the Jewish theme is for that book,
Mhm.
an art project, and questions to think about it. And they're published by Capstone. And there are 4 more coming out in another year, so there'll be like 8 in total.
How did this book come about? Like what led you to reading it?
So I had sent a picture book to Capstone, and then like a year and a half later, they said, "Actually, we want this series. We want a series of Jewish characters in an urban setting. We thought maybe you'd be a good fit. Do you want to write this?" And that's all they kind of gave me to go on. I was like, "Sure." And they're like, "Oh, but we don't want the urban setting to be New York." And I was like, "I've lived in New York for 10 years," but I'm like, "Well, good because I grew up in Miami, so I'll set it there." And they're like, "Great." But then from that, I kind of used my own background to inspire the characters. Like, they're step siblings, they're both Jewish, but one of their parents is from the Dominican Republic, one of the step parents. So they're Spanish and English, and just like my stepmother's from the Dominican Republic, my sister's bilingual. She speaks Spanish and English. I'm not. I can barely do English, so getting there though. But so yeah, it's inspired by my childhood in Miami, and just with casual Jewish themes, which is something I didn't have growing up. Is just casual Jewish characters. So I wanted other kids to have that too.
Okay, let's go back to that picture book for a second. What was it about? Like was it about the same thing? And Like, what about it made them think you would be good for this other series?
Oh, my writing about it was about these two siblings,
Okay.
and their relationship, and the little boy wanted to do ballet, and he wanted his older sister's tutu, and she was special to her. She didn't want to share it. It had nothing to do with him being a boy. Just about, it was just special to her. It was just I think the
Mhm.
kid logic of, and eventually she decides to let him have it because it's not good sitting in a box. So I think it was just like the relationship between the siblings, and the way I story told that they were thought I'd be a good fit for this.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Is there any future for that other picture book?
No, that's just living in it. It's got made a lot of rounds to agents and editors. They got a lot of good feedback, but ultimately, it's just sitting in a drawer. But it did get me the Golda and Ezra book, so I guess it served a purpose.
That publishing is wild.
Oh, it's a wild ride.
Who do you hope reads these books, and what do you think they'll take away from it?
I hope any child, they're for K through 3, kindergarten through 3rd grade. I just read them to my son's class. He's in 2nd grade, and that was really exciting to see their reaction in real time. That was the first time I got to see that. I just hope that kids walk away from it. Kids who have their siblings maybe learn to be a little better siblings. Which my kids were, and just thinking about how you can help, and any little, there's no small, you can always help, however little it is, just to be advocates for themselves and their community, I think.
All right. Well, why don't you share where people can find you and where they can find out more about your books?
Sure. I'm also part of Kids Comics Unite. It's a group of comic creators for do stories for kids, and we're doing an anthology. It's a self-published thing. We're all doing a little story. It's called Let's Go, and I think April through May there's going to be a Kickstarter, and I'll share information about that on my website, holliemichaels.com, and that's Hollie with an IE, HOLLIE, Michaels, MICHAELS.com, and I'm on the socials at HB Michaels, H and B, Holly, Beth, HB Michaels on Blue Sky and Instagram. And I'll share more about that Kickstarter for Let's Go. A bunch of amazing comic creators are involved in that. That's going to be a lot of fun. And that's for general audiences, like a middle grade and younger. And my Golda and Ezra books are available wherever books are sold. And there'll be 4 more coming out in a year, I believe. And my play, Children of Hooverville, is for middle school students about the Dust Bowl era. It's performed around the country, and that's published by YOUTHplays. You can find a link to that on my website as well if you're a theater teacher.
Oh, that's fun. I have had a couple of theater directors this season, so that's fun. Well, thank you, Holly, so much for being here. Thank you for listening to this episode of Turning Back the Pages. If you have any author suggestions, you can follow me on Instagram at whatallywrites or email me at whatallywrites@gmail.com. Ally is ALLY. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen.